Welcome to Single Mom Talks with Mary and Bree. We are so excited to be with you today. Take off.
I'm so excited. So there's this quote that just really hit me so powerfully. And it is, I'm not looking to escape my darkness. I am learning to love myself there. I think so often we get so caught up in trying to run away from our darkness that we don't, we continually find ourselves there again and again and again. Whereas if we would take the time to sit and grieve or to look at the darkness as it is in the present moment, we could evolve. And it feels really hard, and it feels really sticky, and it feels really painful, but it comes and goes in waves. And if we can learn to love ourselves where we're at now, that is when actual growth can occur.
Yeah. And I find that it creates more struggle the more we try to fight our way out of things. I was like the poster child for trying to fight my way out of things. I still you probably still see my billboards up in places because I am like, I ain't got time for this. Like, I get it. Move on. It hurt. Okay, move on.
Yeah.
But in me doing that and me fighting it that way, it actually ends up extending the pain, and it makes whatever pain is there worse. Like, it makes it last longer, and it makes it more painful because I'm fighting against it. I keep having like this example trying to come to mind, like if you have a wound or like you've torn your muscle or something, and if you're trying to get back on that too soon, if you're extending that torn muscle too soon, you're going to end up tearing it again and making it worse. But if you take the time to recover and recuperate, that doesn't mean you can't work other parts of your body. That doesn't mean you can't continue to strengthen your body. It just means that you're doing things a little bit different now, and that strengthening looks different. But man, if I keep trying to hit that torn muscle over and over again, I'm going to end up making the injury worse.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And the thought that I had too while you were talking about wounds was, how often do we just put a freaking Band-Aid on this big gouging wound that needs to be cleaned? And if we don't clean it out, we're going to get gangrene, right?
Yeah.
And I think of this really powerfully in the context of relationships. Because if we don't take the time to know who we are, what we want, what we will and will not accept, what our standards are, we find ourselves in relationships that ultimately we learn a hard lesson. Right? Like we didn't take the time to reflect on past relationships and own the part that we played in it so that we can evolve and grow. And so then we are getting into new relationships and now putting that aspect of that unhealed part of ourselves onto them. And then we bleed on people who didn't even cut us in the first place. And it wasn't their fault. And so it's so crucial to take that time to be still and be just you and God and figure things out with just you and God, and not put a Band-Aid on chasing men or dating or relationships when you yourself are in this space of chaos or like not really truly knowing who you are or what you want. With that being said, I also see this huge excuse of, oh, I can't be in a relationship. I can't go after a relationship because I'm not healed yet. I'm not good enough. But here's the thing. There's certain things that cannot be healed outside of the context of a healthy relationship. Sometimes healing has to take place inside that container of a healthy relationship.
Yes. That makes me think that I think that's why so many second marriages fail, is because too often we're jumping back into a relationship when we haven't worked through what made the first relationship fail in the first place and taking responsibility. It is so easy for us to see all the things that our ex did wrong. And maybe you were really, really hurt. And maybe there was some serious abuse that happened in your past relationship. But what allowed you to get in that relationship in the first place? What prevented you from seeing the red flags? Because the red flags are there. That's why we can always look back and see them later on. But why didn't we see them earlier? Why didn't we check that? Like, was it because we were more concerned with feeling loved and what it would look like to be in a relationship, and what prevented us from seeing that in the first place? And when we work on that and we heal that, then it makes relationships going forward, you're going to pick better people. And then if you're listening and you're in tune with the Spirit and you've learned how the Spirit works within you and talks to you and speaks to you, he'll come in, and God will come in and warn you, like, hey, don't date that guy. Like, that's not a good one. Or, hey, like, maybe pursue this relationship for a little bit. And maybe you don't end up getting married, but if you follow that intuition, which is God, then you figure it out. And then I thought too, there's, I saw a reel from a lady talking about, it's so often she hears people say, I just don't have time to date. And this is something that I say a lot too, is I don't have time to date. Like, how do you balance dating and the emotional bandwidth that requires, on top of providing for my family, on top of being a good mother to my kids, on top of taking care of myself and all those things? How do you do that? And she just was like, there's never a right time. There's never going to be the perfect magical there might be a right time, but there's never going to be a time where things just magically open up and you're not busy. And like, you have all this extra bandwidth to go and put here because everything else is being taken care of. It doesn't work like that. So if it's something that you desire, then pay attention and use that in your conversations with God, going, okay, this is something I desire and this is something I want to work towards. What do I need to do in the meantime? And sometimes he'll say, hey, I need you to work on yourself right now. I need you to heal I need you to sit in the suck for a little bit and figure out what's creating that, and figure out yourself and figure out who you want to be and start healing yourself, so that when you do show up in these dating relationships, they can be less painful for you and the person, the other person.
Yes. And I love what you said about trusting your intuition, trusting God, like bringing that peace. Because I think we all crave that healthy, amazing, beautiful relationship.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's good.
Yes. Like, we're created to have that. And I think so often we kind of push that desire down because we're like, oh, I should be so independent. I should be so like, figure all this out on my own, things like that, that's a great thing to have, I believe.
It's kind of being required of you if you're thrown into a single parent life. Like, it's this paradoxical thing because it's being required of you, but yet it's not all there is to it.
Yes. Oh, for real. But at the same time, like, we also have to take time to realize, like, and truly ask ourselves and connect with God and say, am I really ready to date right now? Am I really, like, in a good space that I can emotionally give myself to this person without it being like, here, let me spew all my trauma on you. Or let me you know what I mean? It's,
yeah.
And when we are connected with God, I feel like dating's going to be so much easier because you can instantly pick up on a vibe. You can instantly realize if this person is worth your time or not. You can instantly decide if this person is in alignment. And I heard this quote somewhere too, like, be so in alignment with God and your source, your higher power, whatever, like, that when you get into a dating situation, that somebody else must also be chasing God for them to be able to get to you. Because then you're not chasing this, oh, this person makes me feel so good. It is, no, I could see myself wanting to create more with this person because of who they are, not what they give me. you know?
Yeah.
And you guys have that similar aspect or vision on life. Whereas if you don't know what you want and you're just like jumping into the dating scene, you're going to change based on who you're dating. You're going to be like a freaking chameleon. Like, oh, this person likes this type of music, or, oh, this person has this vision. I think I want to do that too. Or, you know, whereas if you know who you are, you know what your vision is, you know what you're creating for your kids, you know what type of individual you want your kids to be influenced by, that when you get in the dating scene, you're no longer like, you are like, nope, 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 nope. And if it's a full body, hell yes, you know it's a yes. But if there is something there that is like, something doesn't feel in alignment, it is safe to trust yourself. It is safe to trust yourself. No matter how hard it might be, how much you might feel like, well, this person is so good and I really love them. It's safe to trust the inspiration that you receive.
Yeah. Oh, it was so good. I had so many thoughts, but I was like caught up in listening. Like there's a lot of hard things that are different about dating after divorce than they were when we were young. There's a lot of good things about it too, because, you know, when you were young, you maybe didn't have the trauma, or you didn't have, you hadn't experienced heartbreak in the same way, but you also didn't know yourself, and you didn't know things the way you do when you're older. So you can look at it like, okay, it's like, I keep thinking you marry the two energies, right? There's the carefreeness of dating when you're young and when you're a teenager, young 20 something, and you haven't been married, and you're not looking at everybody assuming that they're going to try to hurt you. But taking the wisdom that has come from having been divorced, or whatever it is that has caused you to be a single mom or whatever, and putting those two things together and going in with a trusting heart, but with a wiser heart, because you have learned, and because you have been through things, and because you've taken that intentional time to heal what was hurt. Because if you're honest, if you were in a bad relationship to begin with, it probably was because you were doing some level of people pleasing. It probably was because you became a chameleon without even noticing it. It was probably because I don't really know what I like. So yeah, sure, that seems great. And maybe it was great. Maybe it was a benign thing, but incrementally you ended up changing who you were by little bits at a time. And so if you're really, really honest with yourself, what got you into that relationship to begin with, and start working on that and healing that, so that when you get back into the dating scene and you're talking to people, you can recognize, do I like this or do I not like this? And if maybe I don't like this, like maybe they like some activity that you don't like, but it doesn't go against your moral values, and it doesn't go against anything there. You just don't like golf. Like I don't understand golf. Like I should probably go try it, because there's like, everybody loves golf, and I'm like, I don't get it. But like, if somebody liking golf isn't like a deal breaker for me. Now, maybe somebody out there it is, but you're going to recognize the difference between a deal breaker and just like, well, I'm not super interested in that, but like, I could go hang out with you doing that just to be with you. Right. Yeah. And so there's a difference between deal breakers and things being, you guys just not being aligned in where you're going and how you look at life and how you approach life, versus he likes to golf and I don't like to golf.
Yes. Ooh, should we talk about some deal breakers?
Ooh, yeah. Take it away.
Because I was just thinking about this too. I was like, what were some of my like immediately, like when I found out a guy played video games, I was like, done. No. Immediately no. Yeah. Like, I have no interest in somebody that plays video games.
Yes.
I don't necessarily think they're a bad person or anything like that. It's just, I don't align with that. Like,
yeah,
it's not my thing. What about for you? Like, what is one of those things that you're like, immediately no?
Oh my gosh, that was a big one. Oh my gosh. Now I can't think of one. I'm on the spot. Like, that was such a huge one.
I know, right? Like, that's just one that, like, guys get so sucked into it. And I've watched things happen in marriages, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, but if you are stuck on video games, you are stuck, like, it's just not, no.
Yeah. I think if somebody is lukewarm about things and they're kind of wishy-washy about where they're going and what they want, and that doesn't mean they have to know, because sometimes we're on a journey to figuring out what it is we're here on the planet to do. And that's okay. Like, that's okay to be on that journey. But if they're really wishy-washy and just kind of, and maybe I'll just stop there. If they feel really wishy-washy and like they haven't stepped into, knowing who they are, or at least they're really on that journey to figuring that out, then that's not something I'm interested in that point. Now, if they get to a point later on and whatever, and it circles back around and they figure that out, then that's okay. But if they're at a point where they're really wishy-washy in who they are and what they're about, then I don't have any interest in that, because that for me has been, I've had experiences there where people are like, yeah, I'm committed and I'm going to do this thing, but they weren't actually committed. And to a point where it ended up crumbling because they only were committed to this thing in order to impress somebody, in order to impress me or whatever. And so the minute they got backlash about that decision, they crumbled. They crumbled under the weight of the decision that they had made. So yeah, that's a big one for me.
Oof. Yes. That wishy-washy energy that you were talking about, like, that also brings up, like, lack of consistency. Like, if your words do not match your actions, bye.
Yeah.
I am not dealing with men who are out of integrity with their word.
Yes.
And that also means that I get to hold myself to these same standards. Right? Like we can't just expect, like, this knight in shining armor to come knock on our door when we ourselves are not living that same standard that we expect.
Right. And it's also important to, like, take the whole picture in, because nobody's perfect. And just like we don't want to be expected to be perfect, we don't want to expect men to be perfect either.
Exactly.
So we all kind of go through these little phases of, like, I'm trying to figure out what this is, and I'm kind of tiptoeing in and out of it because I'm still trying to figure it out. And that, again, is where discernment becomes so key, and learning to hear the spirit. Yeah, and learning yourself is so important, because it will help you kind of go in and go, okay, like, I'm feeling maybe wishy-washy vibes in this relationship right now. What is it? Like, what's creating that? Is it me? Is it my own fears or my own trauma, my own past experiences? Is it because they're at a place where they're still trying to figure things out? Like, and how do we communicate through it? This is something you and I have talked about a lot recently. Like, do they communicate through? And that doesn't mean they can't take time to figure things out, but do they communicate through the pain and the struggle and whatever it is that they're trying to deal with? Or do they just completely shut down and refuse to communicate and run away? Because that doesn't work either. Running away in a relationship does not work. And again, that doesn't mean that you can't be like, I am so mad right now that I need a minute, and I may need a day because I need to calm down, because I don't want to approach this in a state of accusing and anything like that. But there's a difference in doing that and running away. So if you guys go and look up Dax Shepard and what's her name? She's super cute. She plays Anna from Frozen. Kristen Bell. If you guys go look up their relationship and kind of how they work things out, they're the cutest example, because she would get super mad and she would, like, get all huffy. And when they would get in a fight, and she would storm off and take off down the street in her car, and she would sit there and huff and puff and get mad. And Dax was finally like, yo, this doesn't work for me. Like, I have more respect for myself than to allow you to do that. And so, but then he taught her. He was like, this is how you do it. Like, the next time you can't leave the house. You can go as far as the front door, but you can't leave the house. And then it was, you can stop talking to me, but you can't leave the room, or whatever. And that worked for them. But it was a really, like, oh, he had so much respect for himself that he put down that boundary, and she loved him and liked that. She was like, oh, like, you mean I can't act like a child? Huh? And so she took it herself anyway. It's just, so it's not that you can't have room. It's just to say that you can't just bail out and take off when things get hard instead of dealing with them.
Yes. And honestly, like, I'm gonna be real raw and honest here. That was me in my previous relationship. Like, in my marriage, like, that was 1000% me. We would get in a fight and it would be like, bye, I don't even want to talk about this. I would shut down, and then he would like pursue, like talk to me. I need to talk. And I'm like, no, like, I need my space. And the more he pursued, the more I would bottle up. And then it just was, and we learned through this experience though, how to communicate. Like, hey, he'd be like, I know you need time, or vice versa. I'd be like, I need time. He'd be like, okay, how about a day or so? Like, give them a timeline so that you're not freaking waiting for eternity to figure out, like, you know what I mean? And here's the other thing too, is when you truly love someone, you will work things out with them. Like just like that example that you gave them, like, he came up to her and he was like, I have self-respect. But here's the thing. I need you to communicate with me. And there's a little bit of sacrifice on both ends. Like, even though she may want to act like a child, she's going to come back and be like, okay, I do need space, but I'm also going to be respectful of you and what your needs are. And so this is what I need, right? And that's where I think healthy boundaries come in play as well. So yeah, it's really powerful to look at your tendencies. Okay, so this is going to be one of those things that I just like had this light bulb moment of like, we don't only have love languages, we have fight languages too.
Yes, I love this.
If we can understand what our love and fight languages are, it makes relationships, I think, so much easier, right? Because maybe someone is really insecure and they need that extra support of like, I need to know that you still love me. Like, will you still hold me even though you're mad at me? Or, whatever it is, right? Maybe your fight language is like, I need space. Bye. Like, then you know that, okay, I know they still love me. They just need space, or whatever it is. Then you know how to react in that situation.
Oh, it's so good, because the more you get to know each other, the more you're like, okay, she is mad. She needs a minute. And the quicker I can give her a minute, the quicker, like, this is going to come back around and whatever it is. I'm a fighter. I want to figure it out right now. And I want to hash out all the details. And in reality, I want to be able to like throw fists. Like, I want to be able to and spew all the things. But I also am attempting to become an mature adult, and I'm realizing that not all of that is actually helpful. But my tendency is I want to fight. I want to figure it out now, and my job is to learn a healthier way of fighting and not slinging fists, or not slinging. Not that I actually slung fists, but I want to figure it out right now. So, and it makes sense why people would say, do you fight well? Like, yes. What do you do when you disagree? That's something to look at when you're dating too. What happens when you guys disagree about something, and not something like little and trivial? Like, what happens when you really disagree with each other about something? Like, how do you go about fixing that? Do you guys both just kind of like flop over and avoid? Do you guys go and fight it out? Like, are you opposites? Like, what is that? Like, so you guys, when you guys get to this point in the podcast, I want you to share on social media and tag us what your fight language is. And if you don't know what it is, think about it. Bree gave some really great suggestions there. Because I really want to know, because this was the coolest concept that Bree brought up in a group that we were doing together a while back. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's your fight language? I keep thinking of Fight Club too. Like,
oh, it's so important to know. And okay, there's another thing too that I was going to say as well. Like, when I hear that, like, okay, let's talk about this for a second. When I hear that couples don't fight at all, that makes me nervous.
It's odd.
Because here's the thing. Conflict is necessary for growth, and conflict is neutral. And our last coach, April, she's amazing, you guys.
Oh my gosh.
She's phenomenal. This is something that she taught both Mary and I. And that was, conflict is neutral, and you can choose to take it to connection or to contention. Like, the choice is yours. And ultimately, like, we can sit there and avoid the conflict and just be like hum and haw and like pretend like it never happened, sweep it under the rug.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can face it and look at it and realize what is workable, what is not. Because so often we have partners or relationships where one person's like, I want to figure this out. And the other person's like, I want to avoid it. And so what do you have? You have a chase, or you have a runaway and a chase vibe going on.
Yeah.
And then nothing gets resolved.
Yeah.
But if we can like look and figure out what are our fight languages, what are our partners' fight languages, or even in our kids, what do they need, right? Then we can look at it and say, okay, how can I support them when we're going through this? What is it?
There's a bug, and I have to squish it.
Okay. What is it?
I live in the desert. It is a desert bug, okay? I'm just going to leave it at that. And I
Oh my gosh. Okay, the amount of spiders I have seen in my house, I am like,
why? We interrupt this regularly scheduled broadcast.
He was like, I need to make an appearance.
To kill the bug.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
that was fantastic.
Oh my heck. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what would you say then? Because I see this, I see this with different like dating coaches and stuff, where they say it's possible to not fight in your marriage. Like, oh, go ahead. So what would you say to that? What comes to your mind when you see that?
So, okay, this is my opinion. The opinion of Brie, okay, is that I'm not talking about fighting as in screaming, yelling. Like, no, I do not interface with that. That's not okay. No. I'm talking about being able to go up to your partner and say, you know what? It really bothers me that you're showing up this way. And for them to be able to, instead of being offended or go down a spiral or like freak out, they look at that and say, I'm going to sit with that. Yeah. And I'm going to take in what you said, and I'm going to decide what to do with that. Okay. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I appreciate you. That, to me, is an example of a good fight, because you are showing up and being honest with how you are feeling, and you are in integrity with, hey, this is what's coming up for me, but also giving the other person the opportunity to reflect on that and trust them enough that if it is something that they can do and like can transform whatever, that they will work on it. You don't need to harp on them about it. Mm-hmm. It is like, that's the type of fighting I'm talking about that I feel like is necessary for a relationship to grow. Because so often I feel like we see in relationships, like we pretend like everything's okay, or we go into this state of like, I'm so mad that you did this. So then all this resentment builds up, and then you don't actually get to the root of the problem, and then everything boils over, and then you're like, I don't even remember what we're fighting about, but like, I don't, like if you would,
well, then you end up honest about with your everything partner. And nothing.
Exactly. And okay, and this is actually, obviously I don't have a partner right now, but this is actually what I did with my kid. I actually was like, if there is something that you do not like about how I am mothering you, I need you to tell me. I don't care how bad it hurts. I'm here to listen. And I have this safe space on my bed that I'm like, I don't care what it is. You tell me, like, it is a safe, free zone. If you told me that you stole 10 cookies last night, when I told you no cookies after bedtime, like, I will not get mad at you. But I want you to have this safe space for you to be able to tell me exactly what you did, how you did it, all the things, without me coming in and giving this like, you know what I mean? Like that, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Oh, you shouldn't have done that. Oh, you shouldn't have done that. And I think that's the type of relationships, like that's the kind of conflict that is necessary, like that space to be held so that things can come up naturally, so that things can happen in a way that is organic and that we can feel safe to grow and safe to bring this up. Right. So, yeah.
Well, and in a marriage context,
what about you? What's your opinion?
Yeah, well, in a marriage context, that allows you to progress and to move forward, because if you, I wonder if a lot of the problems in marriages start out because that somebody sees a problem and they're not willing to confront it. They're not willing to say something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where a lot of video game problems end up happening is the wife, and I know there's women that play video games too, but the one person realizes that like you're spending like a lot of time on this, and but they don't want to cause a fight or something. And so they don't bring it up. Or maybe they do bring it up and then the person doesn't handle it healthy or whatever. So I loved all of that. Well, and I actually watched a little video, and you may have watched it too, but the guy was talking about how he was like, I hear from guys all the time that they want to marry a powerful woman. And he was like, no, you don't. No, you actually don't. He was like, I wanted a woman to be able to come in and call me on the carpet and call me out on my crap. He was like, no, I really wanted that. Most men that I talk to don't actually want that. They don't want their wife to call them out and tell them they're being a jerk right now. They don't want to hear that because it hurts their ego. And it made me think that, there are plenty of times I'm sure where I'm being a brat and I need to be called out and told, Mary, you're being a brat right now. Stop it. Like, this is how you're approaching me. And in reality, I've had to call that out on my kids too. And I don't go around calling my kids brats. There's a lot of times you hear people like just kind of flippantly being like, oh, they're little brats and whatever. I don't do that. But there are times where I need to point out to one of my children right now, the way you are acting like a brat, or you are acting like a jerk or whatever it is. And I make it real. And we've really built and worked really hard to build up foundations with each other to where I am able to come, which is important in a marriage relationship too. Our relationship is solid and stable there where I can be like, right there, what you just did to your brother or your sister or whatever it is, there's the bug again. I'm going to leave it for a minute. I might not be able to. Okay. You are being a jerk right now. You are being a jerk to your sister, or you are being whatever it is. So I want somebody to be able to do that. And it's funny because we say that and then maybe it happens and we go, and we have to like rethink that. Right. I am not being a brat or whatever it is. But I think in reality, though, we want somebody like at our core, at our truest selves, we want somebody to be able to call us out on our crap so that we're not walking around being this way and thinking we're not, or not realizing that it's affecting people the way it's affecting people.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Like, and I don't know about you, that's one of the biggest things that I look for in friendships, relationships, things like that. Like, somebody who is willing to speak honestly and with kindness, but also boldness, where it's like, right. Bree, you are doing this. You are showing up this way. And we've done this several times to each other. And it's so good. It feels so good for someone to love you.
Scary. Yes. But like the more you do it and the more trust you build with that person, the more free you are within that relationship.
Exactly. And it feels so good because, I mean, originally it's like, ouch, ooh, my ego, right? Like it hurts, but ultimately it's like, okay, I know you're right. And that makes sense. I'm sorry. All right. I will work on changing that. Right.
Right.
But if we don't communicate what it is that's bothering us, how can the other person change or shift?
Yeah.
How can we create a relationship that is strong and solid, whether that be with our kids, our friends, or the person we're dating or whatever, right? If we don't communicate, how can we make progression, right?
Right. Well, I also think it's super important to study, not just yourself, but study. So if you're a woman, study men. Like, how do men work? How do their thoughts work? How do they look at situations? Because so often women will say they want a masculine man, but then they don't allow their man to be masculine. They don't allow him to be this strong presence that would kill a bear or kill an intruder in order to save them. They try to squash that and try to turn him into a woman and soften him up and whatever. And I believe there's, like, we develop our masculine within ourselves and our feminine within ourselves in both of the ways. But are you allowing your man to be masculine? So, like, follow people. I'm always on the lookout for men, especially on Instagram, because it's just easy to find people that way, that are teaching about healthy masculinity, that are teaching what it is to be a man. Like one of my favorite Jordan Peterson quotes is, a good man is not, what is it?
I'll see if I can.
How does he say it? A good man is not, or a weak man is not a good man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control.
Yes.
Butchered the heck out of that. But like, I find, I look for people that I can follow and kind of see how they handle different situations, how they handle conflict within their relationships or within the world or their sphere of influence or whatever it is, so that I can learn what it is that allows a man to be masculine and to be in that really strong masculine state. So that when I get to that point of, I'm in a serious relationship or I'm married, I allow him to be what I want him to be instead of me having low self-worth. So ladies, check yourself on this, because so often I think women, we have really low self-worth. And that is what makes it to where it's hard for us to allow men to be that masculine, that strong masculine figure that we really actually want. But our low self-worth or our ego gets in the way and says no, and tries to like cut that and change that into more like our version of what we think we actually want. So study men. If you're a man listening to this, study women. How do women look at things? How do women think? Yeah. How do women react to situations? Healthy women. And so don't just study yourself, but study who it is, the type of person that you're going to be marrying too.
Oh, so good. So good. I had another thought, but it kind of just like, it's gone. But I mean, it goes along, I think those same lines of exactly what you were talking about, like being, we ultimately want to be who we want to attract. I think that's the opinion of Brie. So if we want, it doesn't mean that we have to be like embody all of that, but we have to hold space. Like if we want to be unconditionally loved, we need to give that to ourselves first. We have to hold that within ourselves first. And so,
well, because if we don't know how to find happiness within ourselves, then we're not going to be happy in a relationship. If you're single listening to this and you're not happy, you're not going to be happy in a relationship if you don't know how to create happiness within yourself. Now, I do believe that there is an element of happiness and love and connect and whatever that comes from being in a relationship. So I'm not trying to knock that, but you need to learn how to self-regulate and how to regulate your own emotions and how to pull yourself out of the pit yourself. It's just like if you were hanging off of a cliff somewhere by yourself and there's nobody to pull you up, you have to learn how to access the power to pull you off of that cliff. Mm-hmm. There's physical power, there's mental power so you don't panic. There's spiritual power because you know that God can come and help, and he can send angels to help you, but you have to be confident about your ability to call on that power within yourself. And you have to have been preparing physically to take care of that situation yourself. So, and then being in a relationship with somebody is just going to magnify that. It's just going to like bubble over into overflow, and you will be equally yoked with each other to where you can take care of your own stuff, but you can come together and just make that even bigger and better because you're together.
Yes. Okay, really fast. Like that reminds me of this other concept too. If we are relying on somebody else to give us our worth, our validation, all of that stuff, that's not a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And people don't want to hear that, but that's the truth of it. If we are relying on our partner or anyone else or anything else outside of ourselves to give us the validation and love that we are craving, we will find ourselves empty always and always seeking that approval from somebody else. Then when this relationship ends, we have to hurry up and fill it up with something else. We have to put that Band-Aid on it. Or we can sit there and okay, what do I need to do so I can love myself more? How am I speaking to myself? Am I taking myself out on weekly date nights? Like, right? Like that, you do what you want, how you want to be treated towards yourself. And that's where it begins. Because then when you do come together, then like you were saying, it's an overflow. You aren't completely relying on the other. You know how draining that must be to be in a relationship? Yeah. Like, well, I do know.
Yeah, totally. We do.
Right? Where I felt like I was that source for him, for that validation, for that, like I need you. And it was exhausting. It was anyway, nobody wants to be in that space.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Absolutely. All right. Any other closing thoughts?
That's all.
Okay. So like this podcast, follow us on Spotify, give us a rating and a review, share this with a friend. And remember, share with us, take a screenshot of this and share with us on social media and tag us and tell us what is your fight language or any other ahas you may have gotten. And you know what? You can take a guess at what that bug is too. And maybe I'll tell you next week because it was taunting me. It came up a third time and it's just like walking across the floor and I'm like, anyway, so, yeah. Follow us on Yes.
Oh,
yes. What? So you can find me on Instagram at Mary E. McIntosh, MCINTOSH. And where can they find you, Bree?
At Coach Bree Renee, BREERENEE. And on Facebook, it's just Bree Renee.
Yep. And I'm Mary McIntosh on Facebook. I will also put that in the description here. So yeah, like and follow us there and take a guess on the critter and let us know what your fight languages are. And we'll see you next week.
Yes! Bye.
Okay, it's stopping.